All right. Well, it's not exactly what I was hoping for, but that's all right. Test chat. Hmm. All right. I don't know what sound alerts even is, but whatever. Bum, bum, bum. All right. Well, for whatever reason, I cannot use Facebook, but that's all right. Hey, Northern Chimp. Yeah, so I am just a working fool today, so this is just to uh keep me honest, I guess. So first we have that. Talk about the endpoints. Talk about pub sub. Do the demo. All right. Cloud storage. Notifications. Oh, Shane, howdy. It's not been great. Um, so I am recording like a mad fool for the rest of the day. Yeah. All right. So then we have. Oh no. What the heck? That is. I. Okay. Um. and dark. Remember. Any question, Mr. Linux distros, what is the best to run? It's Ansible, IPM in general, develop stuff for automation. So it's personal preference. I prefer a Debian-based operating system. I still often install Ubuntu just because, I know that it works and lots of people use it. So there's lots of, online support for it. Anyone would work fine though. And for Ansible specifically, there might be a good use case for using, Fedora or Red Hat based operating system because Red Hat, I think they own Ansible, or at least they're in charge of Ansible. And so a lot of the cutting edge Ansible stuff is based on Red Hat, even though it works on multiple platforms. So I recommend looking at Jeff Geerling's stuff. Jeff Geerling has just a ton of Ansible stuff that is used by pretty much everybody in the industry. And he has, YouTube channel, and he has GitHub repositories and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, and I know that historically he used Red Hat. There was some contention that he had with Red Hat, when they killed off the clones and stuff. But I kind of lost track of what happened there. But that's what I would check his stuff out, because a Red Hat based one might be the ideal thing. But it all works. Any operating or any Linux distribution would work fine, because again, there's not really even clients. It just uses SSH, and Python has to be installed to really utilize Ansible on the client side. But it doesn't even need Python to at least use some Ansible stuff. You can use it on embedded systems too, and just do like raw scripting and stuff like that. Anyway, I digress. Okay. All right. Mm. All right, awesome. All right, cool. So let's do this. Hey, good fishy. Hello, hello. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that I get work done. So, check, check, check. All right, good volume. When it comes down to it, any application that you're running, whether it's in the cloud or on a local server or in a traditional data center that you might have like on-prem stuff, everything is based on triggers and events. Now, at the most basic level, those events or those triggers can be like accessing a web page. And if you're on a traditional server where you have like a web server running all the time, the servers just kind of sit there in idle, but still running. And when a request comes in, it serves out the proper content to you. In the cloud, it's the same kind of idea, but there are some real advantages, especially if you're using something like Cloud Run or Cloud Run functions, because it can not just sit idle and like run on low CPU. It can actually be completely shut off until it is triggered. And again, this is the traditional way that you can save a lot of money with using the cloud. It can just sit there ready, like locked and loaded, ready to serve out whatever the application is designed to do. And then only when it's touched by somebody accessing the website, either in a browser or by some application accessing the website not in a GUI browser, once it's accessed, then the container will start up and it will do its job. And when it's done doing its job after a set amount of time, it will shut itself back off and you won't incur charges. So it really is awesome. But the idea of a trigger or an event to get things going is pretty ubiquitous across all of computing, but especially when you're in the cloud. And there are a number of additional events or triggers that can make things happen. Again, the simplest one is going to be an exposed URL that when you access it, that's the trigger, or possibly a cron job where something is timed and the job will start every so often. But there's a bunch of them, and we're going to cover a wide variety of triggers that you can use to make things happen, even if you aren't accessing a website. All right. Love you too, good fishy. And I will do my best. I'm going to need to get a water though, because I'm already really thirsty and I feel coughing, hacking fits coming on, and that makes me sad. Come on, start up, start up. My goodness, it's taking time. No, no, I'm not coming down with anything. It's still just recovering from COVID. I still have gunk in my lungs and I'm coughing up. And when I talk a long time, it gets tickly and I start coughing. But no, I'm not getting sick. I'm just still slowly recovering. All right, new project ACE333. Oh, I'll skip that for now. We'll definitely get that later. Zoe. All right. I don't think I had any blank spots, so it'll be a quick edit. True. Do. All right. Minimize you. Here. All right, I'm going to go get a water really quick. So let's see if this works. Yeah, I'll be right back. Oh man, I am really. You're probably gone now, Shane, but I am really sorry that. I hope that's not what's happening. But yeah, all the good vibes headed your way. All right. Cool. All right, there we go. Cloud run is there. So all right. Now, these first two that we're going to look at are probably not actually even considered events or event triggers to actually launch a service. But this is the way, if you're using Cloud Run to launch containers, these are the triggers to make things happen, to start the Cloud Run containers, either from like a warm start where you do get charged, or from a cold start where they're just idle until they're triggered. But the two ways that we're going to trigger them are kind of built into how Cloud Run works. So let's actually just go and demo it. If you've used Cloud Run, this is something that you're familiar with, but I specifically want you to think of this in the context of triggering the container to do something. All right. So first of all, we'll start out with the standard web interface. So we're here in the Cloud Console, and we'll just together go over to Cloud Run. You can search for it if yours isn't pinned. And then the two different ways that we can trigger Cloud Run to start is a service, which means that it's a web service, so it has a URL. We'll do that one first. We're just going to do this very quickly. Deploy a service. And we may not even deploy it. We'll just walk through it. This is where you can use a pre-built container, like for example from Docker Hub. So in our case, we could just say, what was it? We could do engine X, and the service name can be web sample region. We're just going to use our default region. And then the endpoint URL is actually created for us. And this is the trigger. Accessing that is the trigger. Authentication, we're going to allow unauthenticated. We don't want people to have to log in. We want it to be public facing. Most of these can be left at default because this really isn't about using Cloud Run. It's just about specifying that is the trigger. Accessing that website is the trigger. But we probably do have to, container port is going to be just 80, not 8080. I think that might be all we need to do. So let's create that. And once it spins up, the way that we trigger that is just to access the URL. Now, while that is spinning up, Oh, maybe it's already done. It's already done. Okay. So yeah, we'll just go to that website. So if we click on this, oh, there. Okay. Our URL is listed right there. So all we do is click on that and it should, yeah, it launched and then our container started up and then boom, we have Nginx. So we triggered the container to start serving a web page, and it just happens to be the default web page. Okay, so that's our very simplistic first way to trigger an application to run. That is the event, is clicking on that URL or accessing that URL, either in a browser or again, another program could have accessed that URL behind the scenes. It didn't have to be a GUI browser. But that is our example of a service or with a web URL. We can now get rid of this. All right, so we'll delete that. The other thing that we can do is create a job. Now, this does not have a web front end. We can say deploy a container, and this is the kind of thing that normally this is done if you have some periodic thing that needs to be executed, but you don't want to ever visit a website to make it happen. It's just a container that runs, like for example, a backup script. Let's say you have a container that will spin up, mount remote volumes, connect to all of your applications or your databases, make backups, store them on the external volume, and then stop. Okay, that would be a job that you would want to run without any user interaction. It's triggered by the event of a cron job, which is just a scheduling tool to make sure that it happens on a regular basis. Okay. So same sort of thing. Now it doesn't make any sense for us to use like a web server here because it would never complete, right? A web server just runs indefinitely, but they do have a sample container, and this is just a job that like sleeps for 30 seconds or something, and then it's complete. So we'll say job done over and over is the name of the job. The region is there, just one task. We want it to run one time. And let's see, we can, we don't need new volumes. No, I think all the defaults are going to be fine. Where is it that we schedule it? That's the container, volume mounts. Maximum time. All right, let's create it. All right, and now, oh, the triggers. Okay, here's where it's a job, but it will not execute unless we manually go in and execute it. We could, the trigger could be us literally clicking the execute button. It would run and then it would shut down and it would wait for us to click execute again and it would run. So I guess really we have three ways that we're going to demonstrate here. The first way is that web URL, then we can just click the execute button, but we can also, if we go to the triggers configuration tab here, we can add a scheduler trigger, and this is going to use the standard Linux or Unix cron format to do this. So the frequency is going to be, it's okay if you're not terribly familiar. If you click on this link, it'll describe it, but it's basically the first field is going to be the minute of the hour. So let's say at 1, 5, and then star, star, star. This is going to say that every day of the month, every day of the week, every month of the year at 5:01 a.m., it's going to execute this. So it's going to execute every day at 5:01 a.m. That's just what that cron frequency is spelled out there. And we can just say continue. The service account, yep, the one that was already there is fine. So we'll create. And now what we've done is use the third way. In order for this to execute, it's going to execute over and over every single day using this schedule. So every day in UTC time at 5:01 a.m., it's going to execute and then quit. And when it executes, now we could still trigger it. You know, we can do it one time. Oh, it's executing. It's doing it. If we look at history, it's going to see it's actually 0 to 1 complete. It's actually running right now as soon as it's done running. And again, this is just a test. So all it does is like function for a couple seconds and then stop. But it's also going to execute over every day at 5:01 a.m. So traditionally, that's how we would execute our functions, but there are more ways. All right, so call this Chrome. And this one does have some edits. Web interface. So we're here in the Cloud Console, and if we click on this, there, okay, our URL is URL. We can get rid of this. URL. We can get rid of this. And get rid of this. Right, so we'll delete that URL. And get rid of this. The other thing that we can do is create a job. Now, this does not have a web front end. Like that. The other thing, get rid of this. The other thing that we can do is create a job. On a regular basis, okay? So same sort of thing. And let's see, we can, no, we don't need volumes, no, I think all the defaults are going to be fine. And where is it that we schedule it? Time. And let's see, one task we wanted to run one time. Oh, time. Let's create it. The name of the job, the reason is there. Just one task we wanted to run one time. And let's create it. No. Oh, the triggers. Okay, here's where it's a job, but it will not execute unless we manually go in and execute it. We could, the trigger could be us literally clicking the execute button. It would run, and then it would create. And now what we've done is go with them. I'm sorry. I already took you out. Oh. All right. Well, as soon as this is done and I upload it, I'm going to take the dog out because the dog is crying. I still love her. Oh, really? First, falling out, puppers. Oh, that was your tail. That wasn't me. That was your tail that made that noise. All right, I'm just about done. I'll upload, take the dog out, and then I'll be right back. It's completed. Oh, where's my mouse? All right. I know. We're going. Just uploading a video, and then I'll take you out. Okay. I'll be right back again, y'all. All right. All right. All right. Yeah, it was the dog. It was not me going to the bathroom. There's people downstairs, but she came all the way up in my office, even though she's scared of the screen behind me, and started crying. So I took her out, and she did go to the bathroom. She really did have to go. She wasn't lying. So, all right. So that's done. Now we get to talk about PubSub. I did get most of the outlines already done. I just have to record the videos. So. Okay. Do. All right, so now let's get into the new stuff, the cool stuff, if you will. One of the most popular ways for events to trigger action in not just Google Cloud, but in the cloud in general, is using a tool called PubSub. Now, PubSub stands for publish and subscribe, and it works kind of like a push-pull type messaging system. And I like to think of it a lot like a bulletin board. So if you've ever been in a situation where there's a bulletin board on the wall and people like put post-its up there that you can read, like, you know, job availabilities or I love yous or whatever it might be. That's kind of how I picture it, because the publishing kind of puts that message out there. And then if you are subscribed to the correct topic, then you get notified or you can see those messages as they are posted. And so that is the key. Like there's the whole bulletin board, which would be the entire subsystem. That's a lot of weird syllables altogether. But you have to subscribe to a topic, and a topic would just be like, for example, on this like bulletin board metaphor, the topic could be important. And then anything that is in the important topic would just be messages like info, more info, kind of like I wrote here, but they're all underneath that important topic. And as long as you're subscribed to the important topic, you're going to see all of those messages that are put out. And just like a real bulletin board, multiple people or multiple applications or services can be subscribed to a particular topic. Now, depending on if you've done things with like the Internet of Things or home automation, MQTT is a messaging service that is very much a PubSub type of system. PubSub, as we're using it now in the Google Cloud, is just very specific PubSub. It doesn't use MQTT, but MQTT is a PubSub type of messaging system. And I mean, it's pretty simplistic, and that's part of its beauty. It can be extremely fast because it is so simple. Literally, you generate a message, put it on the bulletin board under a particular topic, and anybody subscribed or listening to that topic is going to immediately get the message. Now, I don't normally throw a bunch of code at you because I don't want to assume that if you're watching this, you happen to be a programmer and you happen to be a programmer using a specific language. But to demonstrate PubSub is fairly simplistic. So let's actually go in. We'll have to create a topic. So our bulletin board or our PubSub system has a topic that we can post something to. We will deploy some code that is subscribed to that topic, and then we will post or we'll message, add something, publish something to that topic, and then our application should see it. Okay, so we're going to do a bunch of things here, but let's do it together and hopefully it will make sense. And it might be something that you could then adapt into your own cloud-based technologies or your own infrastructure in a way that is fairly simple, but extremely powerful. So again, we're back here in the Google console. I'm going to do this using the GUI method. So I'm going to use the console. We could do this using Cloud Shell, and I encourage you to try that. It's pretty simplistic using Cloud Shell too. But let's go to PubSub, which is right here. Search results, PubSub. What we need to do is create that topic. Okay, so we're going to create the topic that we're going to then post messages to. So just simply create a topic. We'll leave all the defaults as they are. The topic ID is going to be, what should we call it? We'll call it bulletin. All right, so we're going to call it bulletin. Actually, no, because the metaphor is that the different topics are on the bulletin board. So we will call this note card or something, or greetings. We're going to call it greetings. Okay. And then we'll just click create. And that's really all we have to do. It now exists. So that topic exists for us to publish things into if we want. Okay. So we just had to do that first. It's right there. It's called greetings. If we go back, we can see right there, the topic ID is greetings. So now we're going to go into Cloud Run functions, and we're going to create a function using a snippet of code that will subscribe to that topic and listen for things incoming. Okay, so let's go to, we need Cloud Run functions. So I'll search for that. Functions. All right, Cloud Run functions are right here. All right, so we're going to create that function. So I'm just going to click create a function. And if you look in the skill, there is just a little snippet of code. In this case, it happens to be Python. So if you're following along, go ahead and copy that code. Just click the copy button in the skill and then come back here. Let's say it's going to be a Cloud Run function. We'll name it name game. The region is going to be the default. Now the trigger type, this is where HTTPS means it's just going to give us a URL to trigger, but that's not how we want it to be triggered. We want it to be triggered using Cloud PubSub. So we'll click Cloud PubSub, and now it says, okay, what topic are you going to listen to? That's why we created that topic already. So the name of the topic is greetings, and you'll see this actually gives us the entire project name and then topics and greetings, but it's the only one listed here. So we'll just click there. And so that's the topic that we're going to be listening to. All right, so let's open this up. The runtime, I'm going to leave these all at the default. Actually, we don't need that many. I think I'll put the maximum number down to 10, but we will never actually use more than one. So default. All right, next. All right, and here is where we decide what kind of code we're going to use. And remember I said we're going to use Python, so we'll use the latest version of Python available, so Python 3.1.2. And let's see, I'm going to get rid of that requirements.txt. So main.py, I'm going to erase this. There's sample code right there. I'm erasing that, and then I'm just going to paste in that code that is in the skill. Why can't I click paste? Oh, here, we'll just do Control V, paste it in. All right, and so here is the code. We could go through this. You can go through this, and if you can figure out exactly what it's doing. But the name of our function is subscribe, so the entry point here is going to be subscribe. Now I don't need to specify the topic here because remember, that's the trigger. Cloud Functions is defining what topic it's listening to, and it's going to send the messages in that topic to this function. So we don't need to specify the topic name inside our code, but the way code and Cloud Functions works, we have to describe the entry point, which is the name of the function. So that should be everything we need. I'm going to click deploy, and it's going to create this function, and then it will start running, and it will just be there, and it's subscribed to that topic. And so if we then publish something, again, the pub side of PubSub, to that topic, this should get that message and then use that in the function, and we'll see the results. Let's wait for it to spin up. I'll pause it here if it takes a while. All right, there it did it. It built it, it deployed it, and now it is running. If we go back to functions, we see the Cloud Run function called name game is running. The topic that it's listening for is greetings. All right, so let's go in there. And if we go over to the logs, I just want to show you like there's nothing up my sleeve here. So the logs are like the output from the thing. So here it is, it's running, it's working. And we don't see anything being triggered yet. So let's go publish something to that topic. And we can actually do that right in the PubSub interface. So we go back here. Greetings again is our topic. So we'll click on greetings, go over to messages, and this is where we can actually publish a message manually. Now we could do this programmatically, but I don't want to throw more code at us. So we're just going to do this manually. All right. So I'm going to publish a message, one message. The name of the message is going to be, let's say Sweetums. All right. So that's going to be the message that gets published in the topic is just the word Sweetums. All right. So I'm going to say publish. The message was published. It's there. It was put into the pub subtopic. So our running application in Google Cloud Functions should have found it. So let's go back there. Okay. Cloud Run Functions. Here's our name game. Click on this. And now if we go to the logs again, we should see a different output or more output because it's been listening. And sure enough, there we go. It listened. And what the function does is it says hello, comma, and then inserts that message right there. So it says hello, Sweetums. And if you remember, I actually put one exclamation point after the name Sweetums, and it had in its code an exclamation point too. So there's now two exclamation points. But that we successfully used PubSub. And you can, I mean, this is a very simplistic example, but you can see how this could be very useful for different applications, different microservices that are trying to communicate events back and forth. Like if somebody publishes a message, it could trigger some, I don't know, AI editing or something. There's just an unlimited number of things that you can do. And PubSub is fairly industry standard. Everybody understands how it works, the idea of topics and subscriptions. And it's just a great way to trigger events that are not the traditional methods of like either a web URL or a cron job. All right, so now let's get into like a bulletin board. like a bulletin board. So if you've ever been in a situation where there's a bulletin board on the wall and people like put Post-its up there that get the message. Now I don't get the message. Now I don't normally throw a bunch of code at you because extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. So again, we're back here in note card or something, or greetings. We're gonna so we will call this we will call this greetings. We're gonna call it greetings, okay? And then we'll just put create. And that's really all we have to do. It now exists, so that topic exists for us to publish things into if we want. Okay, so we just had to do that first. It's right there. It's called greetings. If we go back, we can see right there. The topic ID is greetings. So run functions. So I'll search for that. Let's go to let's go to run functions. So I'll search for that. Search for that. All right, cloud run functions right here. All right, so we're going to create that function. So name game function, we'll name it, name game. The region is going to be the default. Now, that is in the skill. Why can't I just do Control V, paste it in. That code that is in the skill. And then I'm just going to paste in that code that is in the skill. All right, and so paste it in. All right. In the skill. All right. And so here is the code. We could go through this. You can go through this and if you can figure out exactly what it's doing. But the name of our function is subscribe. So the entry point here is going to be subscribe. Now I don't need to specify the topic here because remember, for a while. Takes a while. All right, there it did it. It built it, it deployed it, and now it is running. If we go back to functions, we see the Cloud Run function called name game is running. The topic that it's listening for is greetings. All right, so let's go in there. And if we go over to the logs in the PubSub, so we go back here, greetings again is our topic. So we'll click on greetings. I'm going to click publish. Let's go back there. Go back there. Okay, Cloud Run functions. Here's our name game. Click on this, and now 66, 67. Go, go, go. Clean up all my stuff here. Delete that. All right. All right, next we are doing, oh, but is it storage? Let's see. I don't want to WebHubs. No, I don't want that. Not Cloudflare. Oh, man. How do I even find it? I did have it. Generally, you should not use it. All right. Got it. Oh no, where did I? Oh, it's over here. Okay, good, good, good. Now, the next event triggering mechanism is something you shouldn't use. Now, I know that's a really weird way to start a section, but using cloud storage notification events, this is something that still works, but this was a precursor to PubSub. So even according to Google's documentation, which we'll look at in a minute, you should be using PubSub to get to trigger an event. Like if something is added to a bucket, you can use PubSub to post a message into a topic and then, use a subscription to get that information. And that is like the ideal way to trigger that event using PubSub. However, before PubSub was a thing, there was a notification system that you could directly contact an application over its web URL if an event took place inside of a bucket. So if an application like placed an image in a bucket, that would trigger a call to a specific web URL sending a message directly. Now, we're not going to set up code for this, but I want you to understand kind of how it works. And this really is only something you would still use if you had some legacy code that instead of waiting to be triggered by PubSub, it was designed and is functional in that it's waiting for a trigger on an existing web URL. Like you had designed it before the days of PubSub. It's working fine. You don't want to redesign it to use PubSub. So this event notification is still possible. So let's go over it, and we'll go over the documentation with Google, and you'll know it's there if you ever run across a need for it, but you shouldn't use it if you're starting from scratch. So the event trigger is literally called cloud storage notification. It is, like I said, a precursor to PubSub. It is still active, but it is not recommended. And not just by me, but Google recommends you don't use this methodology. Now, this is one key thing I wanted to point out. Since notification events are sent directly to a web application, and they don't just sit like on the virtual bulletin board, like in the PubSub message queue, since it sends it directly to an app, if that app isn't currently running or isn't available, the cloud storage notification mechanism will keep retrying, right? It'll regress how often. Like at first it'll go every 30 seconds, and then it'll go every 90 seconds. And I think it keeps going every 90 seconds. But the key is it will keep trying for 7 full days to get that message delivered directly to the web application. Okay, so it isn't like PubSub where it's posted and then everybody's happy and you just wait for it to be picked up. This is a direct active push mechanism instead of a push-pull mechanism. This requires the application to be listening. Now, it's okay if you can't read this really well. I'm just going to kind of gloss over what they talk about with object change notification. And this happens to, and it says right here, should you use object change notification? Generally, you should not use this method. it's again, this was before the days of PubSub, and now they recommend that you use PubSub notifications for cloud storage. But nevertheless, how it works is fairly complex too. So we have to have an application URL. Remember, this will send a notification directly to an application URL. So you have to have like a container or an application ready to receive this information all the time. You have to have a channel identifier because it actually creates a channel from the cloud storage, the bucket, to the application. So it has to create that channel. And so you need to know the name or the ID of that channel and then send it across the channel. And then you have to remember to tear that channel down. Otherwise, it's just established and sitting there. So after the message has been sent, you also have to tear down that connection that was set up to connect the two systems. A client token is optional, if it's encrypted or if there's authorization in mind. But basically, you set up a notification event making a watch all request, and it's basically just constantly monitoring the bucket for something to happen. When something happens, it uses a post request because, again, remember, this goes directly to a web application that has to be ready to receive a post from, through this channel from the object change notification. And this is what it will look like. It sends that. And as long as the application is listening, it gets the notification, and then you have to remove the notification channel afterwards. Otherwise, it's just going to be sitting there taking up resources. And you can have multiple types of messages, but sync is the one that is generally used. You sync the information here to the remote application so it knows. It's very complicated. It's fairly hard to implement unless you already have it in place. And that's really what I wanted to get across. This is really only an option if you have a setup where an application is designed to listen for an event notification via channel from cloud storage directly. If you are starting from scratch, just use PubSub. It's the way to go. But this is still there for legacy purposes, and you may find yourself using an application that was designed for this in, let's say you have a new infrastructure, but you're using an application that somebody else designed that was set up for this type of event notification. In that case, yes, it's still there. It's not deprecated. It's still perfectly valid. It's just not the way you should design it from scratch. DaVinci Resolve, 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 Resolve. This is cloud storage. Now the next event. So the event trigger is literally called from the object change notification, and this is to get across. Wanted to get across. This is really only an option if you. All right. Next up is event arc. Bum, bum, bum. Go, go, go. Mhm. Okay, almost done. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I saved arguably the most confusing way to trigger events for last, and it's called Event Arc. Now, Event Arc is not like replacing PubSub. It is not like a it's just different, right? It's PubSub does things really, really well. What it's designed for, it excels at some things. EventArc is the same, but it just functions differently. And a lot of the things to think about with the differences should help you decide if EventArc is going to be a better triggering mechanism than PubSub, but it's important to realize that EventArc is not better than PubSub. If anything, PubSub is like the industry standard. It's the gold crown of event messaging and signaling between microservices. But EventArc is more complicated. It's an active connection. So in that regard, it's a little bit like the cloud storage notification event thing of old, in that it directly connects to services, but it's not a weakness in this point, because Event Arc will do routing and filtering based on rules like who should get the message, how should it get there, should everybody get the message. It's a very rules based event or message delivery system. And the nice thing is those rules and filters and routing mechanisms are integrated into almost every single service that Google Cloud has, including some outside services that Google just allows us to connect to. For example, Event will connect to MQTT, which is like a PubSub system. You can use Event Arc to communicate through PubSub. It's very complicated, but it has some strengths that make it a viable option in some situations. But it's a very subtle difference in it. It excels at things in very subtle ways that really only become aha moments if you're deep into the development process of multi-part applications that utilize microservices and backend storage and all of those things. So we're going to talk about the strengths, but if you don't quite get a feel for what you might use Event Arc for, that's okay. Just as long as we understand the various strengths that it has and why it might be a good idea, that is plenty. All right, so Event Arc, again, this is a Google event messaging notification triggering system. And like I said, it is routed and filtered from the application that's creating it to the application or service that it is connecting to. It's active, right? It's not push pull like PubSub. It is active, meaning it does its thing, finds the source, the source and the destination, and it does its thing. So think of it as like a workflow to get an event message or an event trigger from one place to another. It's a workflow. It's active. It's not that push and pull of PubSub. It is really good if two services need to be in sync, because with the push pull aspect of PubSub, it can be extremely fast, right? It's low latency, but PubSub is low latency and EventArc is low latency. So that alone is not going to differentiate the two. But the thing with PubSub's push-pull technology is that it isn't by design this instantaneous in sync active connection. And so if you have two services that need to function in perfect synchronicity, EventArc is going to be a trigger that is going to be more efficient at getting that synchronicity between two services because of its active nature. Okay. And then the really cool thing about EventArc, which we're going to look at next, is that there are so many hooks or mechanisms to communicate with Google Cloud services that make these workflows really effective, and they can be very complicated with different routing paths and filtering and et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to look at some of the ways that you can use EventArc, but we're not actually going to create code with it because again, it's so subtle and it only is an advantage in certain situations. So let's look at EventArc, but know that it's not replacing PubSub. It's an alternative and a different way of sending event triggers and messages. All right, so back here in our Cloud Console, let's actually just search for EventArc. EventArc, it's the modern event delivery, but again, it's not replacing PubSub. Nobody should confuse that. Okay, now EventArc does have a new thing called a bus. We're not going to talk about that at all. It's just one of the preview features currently, but basically a trigger is created because that's what this is. It's a triggering mechanism that takes events and it will trigger, the communication or trigger one thing to do the other. What I wanted to bring you here to show you, let's zoom in a little bit just so you can see some of this stuff. First, we would create a name. We're not even going to do that. We're going to look at the Google sources. Remember I said there are so many ways or hooks into the various services. So Google sources or third party. Remember I said we could do things like MQTT or things like that, but let's look at just the Google sources. So what is the event provider going to be? This is where does the beginning of the workflow start? Like an event happens on one of these providers or one of these applications or services. And you'll look, this is pretty much everything in Google Cloud Platform, right? These are just all of the everything, right? In fact, like I said, you can really add some more confusion because you can use EventArc with PubSub, but again, it just functions differently. So I'm not going to add that as the confusion. But let's say we wanted to look at, cloud storage, for example. Okay, so inside cloud storage, that's the event provider, but what type of events are available for us to start that workflow? Well, there's a bunch of them as well. And you can see, so in this case, the live version of an object has become a non-current version. So if we archive something in a bucket, this is the trigger. So let's click on that. So the event is an object in a bucket is archived. Okay. And now what type of information is going to be sent? What is the message that's going to be sent if that happens in a particular bucket? First, we have to say, what bucket, but what looks like JSON in this case is our only event data type. So it's going to send a JSON message, but what bucket are we going to look at? And I have some buckets. So like turtle bucket 7, we'll say. So it's going to watch for archived events in turtle bucket 7 and what is the destination, right? Remember, it routes it from one thing to another actively in a workflow. So this is not just going to publish a message. This is going to send a message directly from one to another. So what is the destination? Well, it could be Cloud Run. It could be a workflow. It could be Google Kubernetes Engine. It could be an HTTP endpoint. So let's say that there's an application waiting to listen. Well, we could send it to there. But Cloud Run, let's see a Cloud Run service. I don't have any running, but you get the idea. It goes from one event creating mechanism like the cloud storage when something is archived, and it routes that information to another service in Google Cloud, and happens in real time. It's active, and it's not push pull. It's like an active routed messaging, and in this case, the messaging would be a JSON message. So Event Arc can do the same things as PubSub, but it does it in a different way. And in cases like you need perfect synchronicity, it is more effective at providing that. Not because it has lower latency. Both PubSub and EventArc have extremely low latency. They're extremely efficient processes, but just the idea of keeping two services in sync, an active connection is going to be a better way to go about doing that. So don't stress too much about using Event Arc, in a real live situation in your Google Cloud platform right now. Just know that it is a triggering mechanism, that there's all sorts of hooks that you can connect from, service to service, and it's that active workflows with routing to make sure that the message gets there. And it just works differently than PubSub. PubSub is still usually the go-to for triggering or events or messaging, but some cases EventArc is what you want to look at. And in those use cases, it's really hard to beat EventArc for how it does that active routing between services. Okie smoky dokie. That's the end of that. I do still have the validation section. Oh man, this takes so long. I always expect it to take less time, but all right. So back here in our cloud event arc, so don't stress too much. All right, uploading. Well, I could do this in another window. Uh, All right, since a lot of these solutions can work for multiple, no, now, as with most things in the cloud, you can accomplish a task using multiple methods, and using events is no different, right? You could use EventArc, you could use PubSub, but there are some instances where one is going to be a wiser choice, and that's really what the goal of this validation section is to see if you have an understanding of why one particular method for doing event triggering might make the most sense. So let's just go through these together. Hopefully you got the same thing, but let's go through it. So an existing thumbnail creation application has a web interface listening for interaction. The desire is to call the application whenever a photo is added to a specific storage bucket. Which event trigger would be ideal? Now, we could use probably anything except cron tab. That doesn't make any sense. But in this case, we have that existing application listening on a web interface. And that's really the key. So in that case, remember, that is how event triggering happened before the days of PubSub, and we just use cloud storage notification events, and it directly contacted the application or the microservice that was listening on a web URL, creates that channel and sends it. So let's see if that is correct. Okay, so that is our answer there. Next, every time an image is uploaded to a cloud storage bucket, I mean, it's the same scenario at first, a cloud run function needs to run image recognition and metadata analysis. What would be the best way to trigger the function? Okay, so this is the same type of scenario, but instead of accessing over that web interface, what has to happen is Cloud Run needs to run image recognition. So Cloud Run is designed to work really well with the more modern PubSub, right? Now, could we do this with EventArc? Sure, but we don't need to, right? PubSub, like I said, is kind of the gold standard. So if PubSub makes sense, that's probably what we want to do. And so in this case, we would use a PubSub trigger, which launches the Cloud Run function. Okay, so that is why we could do it. Now, you could make an argument that EventArc would be just as valid, and you would be right. But in this case, PubSub since it is the more commonly used and the more simple to implement, remember, it's just a matter of making the topic. That's probably the best answer. So that's why I chose that as the best answer. But I wouldn't get in a fist fight with you if you said event arc was the way to go there. But cloud storage notification events would not be ideal because this cloud run function isn't listening necessarily on a web interface all the time. Okay, so the next one here, our last one, every time an image is uploaded to a cloud storage bucket, again, same scenario that is like starting it out, so the same triggering event, a copy of the image needs to get sent to the appropriate microservice based on who uploaded the image. What method makes the most sense for triggering the appropriate workflow? And that one, I mean, you should have been triggered, no pun intended. But when I said the appropriate workflow, now this is taking information and routing appropriately based on conditions, right? So the routing and the filtering of where this event trigger goes is dependent on who uploaded the image. And in this case, could it be done with PubSub? Possibly. We would have to make the message that is actually sent a lot bigger and then have some processing on the receiving end that would know what to do with that extra message information. But this is a perfect situation for using Event Arc because it can route and filter based on criteria like who is the user that uploaded it. You know, if it is an administrator, well, then maybe it automatically gets, I don't know, scanned for metadata or something. But the idea is it's routed through a workflow. So in this case, Event Arc would be the answer. Now, hopefully, even if you didn't select the same ones that I did, hopefully you understand why we chose those as the most appropriate, not the only one that would work, but the most appropriate solution for implementing an event trigger. Now, as with most things in the cloud, you can accomplish a task using. That's correct. So that is our answer there. It's that channel and send it. So the channel and send it. So that is our answer there. Channel and send it. So that is our answer there. Next, every time an image is uploaded to a cloud storage bucket, Event Arc would be the answer. Be the answer. Now, hopefully, even if you didn't select the same ones that I did, hopefully you understand why we chose those as the most appropriate, not the only one that would work, but the most appropriate solution for implementing an event trigger. Do, do, do. Okay, one down. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go